Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Google Tools for a Complete Video PD Solution. This session is part of a series of free webinars offered every week or two by the Stark Portage Area Computer Consortium, or SPARC for short. SPARC is an information technology center up here in Northeast Ohio where we support about 30 school districts. However, this webinar is open to everyone, and we'd like to welcome all the people who have joined us live today or are watching the recording in the future. My name is Eric Curts, and I am a technology integration specialist at SPARC, and I will be your presenter for this session today. I am joined by my coworker, Anthony, who will be monitoring the Q&A doc. A little bit more information about that in a moment. Actually joined by him virtually, as neither one of us are physically in the offices today. We have a snow day here that even shut down our offices, so we're doing these each from separate remote locations. So very, very virtual today. All of the information for today's webinar can be found at the link tiny.cc/sparc, SPARCC 231. And I'm going to go there in just a moment to show you what that page looks like. And I would encourage you to go there as well if you haven't. If you're watching the live video, you're probably already there. But if you're watching this recorded in the future, that's the link you'll want to go to get to all of the session resources. So let me go ahead and pop on over to that page, show you what that looks like. I'll zoom in just a little bit on it. There we go. And so this is the resource page that you'll get to, where you're going to find the live video, which will turn into the recorded video after this is done. And then below there is a load of resources, the slideshow we're going to go through, and then all of the different templates that I have put together that we're going to be looking at for this presentation are all freely available for you guys there to make copies of and use in any way you need to. Below the resources, there is a live session chat document. Just give a click on that link there, and that'll open up an editable Google Doc. You can type any questions you have, share any resources, ideas, just connect with each other. Anthony is going to be monitoring that doc, and he'll try to answer questions that he can. And if there's anything that does need to come to me, he'll be sure to highlight it so that I can see that in the doc as well. Below there is a session evaluation. When this is all done, we definitely encourage you to give a click on that and give us some feedback. Very short evaluation, but we always appreciate feedback to help improve these. And then finally, at the very bottom, there is a link to get a certificate of attendance for 1 contact hour. So there's a short quiz you can take after this webinar is over. And when you complete that and pass it, you'll be emailed a PDF certificate of attendance that you can turn into your school's LPDC or whatever PD organization you have. All right, now while you're there on the website, you might as well visit a couple other quick little things. Just let you know at the top, there's a few menu options, including our PD schedule, so you can see what other webinars are coming up. We've got quite a few of them still coming up here in the next month. There's also a link to our recorded trainings where you can see all the other ones we've done. We'll be talking about that in a little bit more detail here in a little bit. There's also a newsletter you can sign up for to stay in the loop on the latest information about our PD offerings and other technology integration news. And finally, there's a contact link if you need to get in touch with Anthony or myself. Fantastic. All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll head back over to the session for today. All right, there we go. Fantastic. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll jump right on into our session. We already know who I am, so we'll move past that and we'll get on to our agenda. So what are we going to be talking about here today? Well, this is sort of the webinar behind the webinars. We're going to be talking about how we make our video professional development webinars and how you could do the same thing for your staff, for your students. That's really the idea behind this. So we're going to talk about our webinar history as far as what we've done with this so far, talk about why video PD is a good idea, and then talk about why Google Tools might be some good options for you to consider for making your video PD. The bulk of the time, though, it's going to be on how we do it. As Anthony likes to say, we're going to show you how the sausage is made. Yes, we're going to show you exactly what we do to create these every week or so. And then finally, we'll finish up with what we have learned from this process. All right. As far as what you need for this session, the prereqs would simply be you need a Google account, either a Google Apps for Education account or a personal Gmail account if you want to create your own video PD. It would be helpful to have a general understanding of Google tools. Some of the things we're going to talk about are a little bit advanced. Some are very, very simple, but the more you're comfortable with Google Apps or the Google tools, the easier that'll be for you. Now, I should pause for a moment to mention you do not need a Google account to take the video PD, to receive it. So anybody can watch the video PD that we create. No special account, nothing like that is needed. What I'm referring to here is to do the things I'm showing you today, to create your own video PD using the tools that we're looking at. Yes, you would need a Google Apps or a Gmail account. All right, so let's get on with the session. As a final reminder, tiny.cc/spark, SPARCC 231 will get you to all of the help guides and templates and other resources for this session. All right, let's get going. So first of all, our story. So what has been going on with webinars and myself and Anthony? Well, first of all, we've been doing these webinars since December of 2014. So a little bit over a year and a few months is back when we first started doing these webinars. Since then, we've made 30 webinars. Well, today would be 31. Today we'll make 31 of those, but we've done 30 over the course of this last year and so many months. So we haven't quite done one a week. That was sort of our plan, but summertime, that's really our very, very busy time for PD. We do a lot of training in the summer, and so we did not do webinars during the summer, and every now and then there's holidays and things like that. So we don't quite make it every week, but we have gotten 30 in over the last year and a few months, and they've been pretty well received. We have had, as of this morning, I'm sure the number's changing all the time, but as of this morning, our webinars have been viewed over 45,000 times by people locally, sure, but really by people anywhere. And that's the thing. Our webinars, yes, we do create them for the schools that we serve, but we make them available to anybody to watch and use in any way you want. So people all over the state of Ohio, around the country, and quite frankly, around the globe have been accessing the webinars. In addition to tracking how many views we get, we also look at things like how many certificates we give out. Now, not everybody wants to earn a certificate of attendance. That's okay. Some people just want to watch the webinar, learn from it, and move on. That's perfectly fine. But for those that do want a PDF certificate of attendance, we have issued over 2,000 of those. So that is fantastic to think of all those people who have received hours to help them with their certification. And we also track evaluations. And so far, we've had close to 600, a little over 562 evaluations. And let me go ahead and I'll pull up our spreadsheet so you can see what the exact numbers are as of this moment. So here's our tracking our tracking spreadsheet that we use to keep track of all this. And you can see all the webinars down the side here. And then just lots of stuff. And this is all dynamic. We don't type any of this in. It just pulls it all through formulas into here. So for example, we're up to 45,150 views. We've had 2,072 people pass the quizzes, and we've had 565 evaluations. Now that is on a 4-point scale, 1 to 4. And our average is at 3.9. So that's excellent. Very good feedback. And we truly do appreciate the feedback people give us on the webinars. It helps us to improve these over time. So that's a little bit about our story as far as how we've been successful so far with our webinars. And if you, as we mentioned at the beginning, want to see any of the past webinars, those are always available on our tech integration site at ti.techintegration.apps.spark.org. You can either go there and then click on the recorded trainings link, or you can just go to /videopd, and you'll see again that is right there at the top where you see recorded trainings. And we do have, like we said, quite a lot of these. As of today, we'll have 31 that we've done. So you can go in and you can check out any of these webinars that we've done in the past. They'll always be available here for you guys to access. And again, upcoming webinars on the website as well. So the big question then is, well, why did we do this? Why did we decide to go the route of video PD? Now, I should make a point to say we have not stopped doing other types of PD. Absolutely. We still do face-to-face. We go out to schools. Schools come to us. We do Google boot camps in the summer. All those things, absolutely still doing that. That's not going away. But why did we add Video PD to our collection of options? Well, there's a number of reasons for this. One of them is, well, there's just two of us. It's me and it's Anthony. And there's thousands of staff out there and tens of thousands of students. And we want to be able to reach them. And so sometimes there's just not enough of us to go around. And so we thought, well, hey, if we record some of our trainings and make those available, that could reach a lot more people than we can reach face to face all the time. It's also convenient for our attendees. They don't have to drive a distance to get to us because, again, we serve 2 counties and even some areas around that. Some people could have to drive an hour or more to be able to get to our location. So this is convenient. People can just watch these webinars any place, anytime, whatever works for them. They can maybe they have kids and they want to wait till the kids are in bed at night to be able to finally focus and quiet down and be able to learn something, or maybe they think best first thing in the morning, or whatever the case might be. So this is convenient for our attendees, watching anytime, any way you would like to. Another nice thing, because they're recorded, is it does give attendees the ability to pause, to rewind, to rewatch, to jump forward. If something doesn't make sense, you want to listen to it again, no problem. Just go back a few clicks and hear that over again. Or if you are understanding something, want to jump up a little bit, no problem at all. You have those options. So it gives you a lot of control over your professional development rather than just hearing it one time. As we said, this has helped us reach a lot more people than we would have on our own. Another benefit of this is that it has ended up being a great supplement to our normal professional development. So let's say I am doing a face-to-face training and somebody asks a question that goes above and beyond what we have time to handle that day. I love being able to say, hey, no problem. Go to our tech integration page and we've got a webinar just on the topic that you're looking into. And so this will help you. Or if somebody needs some additional resources to help them, we can always refer to those and say, if you need to hear this again, if whatever I'm going through here today doesn't quite click, we have the same information available to you in our webinars. And of course, it's great to be able to track the usage to help us see if this is being effective or not. So that's a lot of reasons to consider doing video professional development in addition to your traditional PD. So then the question becomes, what should you use to do this? And I'm not here to say that Google is the way to do this. Absolutely not. There's tons of tools out there, and you find the tool that makes sense for you, whether it's Adobe Connect, Cisco WebEx, GoToWebinar, Blackboard Collaborate, on and on and on. There's so many options. I just listed a few of the more common ones. So that's great. Find the tool that works for you. Having said that, we would like to talk about why we are using Google tools for this process. So when we decided we were going to start doing our video webinars, we had to make that decision, and we did. We looked at a lot of different tools out there, commercial tools and all sorts of options. And we decided we were going to home grow our own solution for this for a number of reasons. One, of course, is it's free, and that's always phenomenal for schools because we don't have much of a budget to work with as educators. That's always the case. We want to be very responsible with the taxpayers' money, make sure we're making the most out of what we have. And so Google tools, they're free to try it out. Hey, if it doesn't work, you didn't lose anything other than, of course, whatever time you put into it. They're free to use, and it's free to grow if you want to keep on doing more things with them, which leads to the idea of being scalable. Some of the tools that are commercial tools can get pretty expensive if you start scaling them up, trying to get more people viewing or more people watching the webinars. You know what? There's no limit. There's no cost. I can have, as you've seen, tens of thousands of people can watch these recordings, and there's no cost for that whatsoever. And we can have an unlimited number of people watching them live as well. Another nice thing is it's customizable. Now, you may say, I'd prefer not. I'd rather have it just out of the box, ready to go. Well, actually, we really like to tinker and tweak with things. And so we were able to build this system exactly the way we wanted to do exactly what we needed, which was nice. Another nice thing is that a lot of the stuff we're looking at is pretty easy today. Using Hangouts, using forms, using docs. A lot of that's very easy, very familiar, and there's just a few points to this that are a little bit more sophisticated, and for those, we're going to pause a little bit and dive a little deeper into those, and I've got tons of resources and templates to help you guys with those. So what tools did we end up using? Well, pretty much everything but the kitchen sink. I mean, we have over time pulled in more and more and more Google tools to make this the most automated, simple process we can because we don't have time. That's another thing. We don't have a lot of money and we don't have a lot of time. And so this has to be something that we can do quickly, have it over with, and have it out to people. And so we have found ways to use, as you can see on this slide, at least 14 different Google tools. And as we go through this session today, I'm going to be explaining how we use those. So that's where we're up to now, is our process. Now, I am going to go through and show you the whole process from start to finish. Having said that, you don't have to do everything we do. I'm just hoping that something will click with you and you'll say, I like that piece. You know, I want to use that tool in a way I haven't before, or I think I can take that tool and incorporate it into how I do my professional development. So take a look at the whole thing, decide what you want to use. If you want to take the whole system as it is and just copy it and use it, that's perfectly fine. We've actually had several school districts do exactly that. They've said, how is it that you do the webinars? And we gave them all the information and gave them all our templates, and they basically copied that process. And that's wonderful. But again, you pick the sections and the things that work best for you. All right, well, let's go ahead and we're going to dive into this right now. All right, first things first. The first step in our process is the checklist. Okay, there's a lot of steps involved in doing a webinar, and so we have developed a checklist to keep us from missing any of those. Now, at this point, from here on out, I'm going to be clicking a bunch of links. Every link I click, every single one of them, they're all available to you guys. Don't forget, on the web page for this webinar, if you scroll down below the video, you see all these resources. There's the checklist I'm about to click on. Every single thing I have here, you guys have full access to. It's going to be view only for you, so you'll need to make a copy of it, but you can have access to all of this. All right, so let's start off with our checklist here. Give a click on that. Now, it won't be view only for me since I'm the one running this, but you guys, again, you'll have to make copies of these. So if you want to use, for example, the checklist, you would just have to click File and then choose Make a Copy. And that would allow you to make your own copy of it, and then you could edit that and do whatever you want with it. So this is our checklist. And again, it may not make sense to you because this is how we do it. But again, this was the idea, is pretty much everything. And as I go down through here, you'll see things like the folder and the web page and the shortened URL and the header images and the registration form and the chat doc and the evaluation form and the calendar event and the Hangout on Air and on and on. So many different things. The quiz, all of this stuff. I have put together a very detailed checklist. Now, it may look intimidating, like, oh my gosh, Eric, that's a ton of stuff. Well, it's really not that much stuff. I would say, honestly, from beginning to end, if I just sit down and go through this, really, we're talking 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, depending upon if I need to do anything special with it. But for the most part, 15 to 30 minutes, I can zip through this whole checklist and get a webinar set up. I've just gone into a lot of detail so that we don't forget something, to make sure that we've covered all of that. So that's the first thing I do, is I literally print this checklist out. Yeah, I know, stay digital. No, I literally print it out and I check these things off as I go, because the phone's going to ring or somebody's going to walk in and I'm going to have to stop halfway through, and I don't want to forget, where was I at? So I do physically print this out and check this off as I go through setting up the webinar. Okay, so that's the first thing, is our checklist. What's next? After that, what I then do is I fill out a special spreadsheet that I call the Webinar Details Generator Sheet. Okay, so let me open that up for you and explain what this is. Now, just a moment ago, you saw that whole giant checklist of all the stuff we have to do. Well, the thing is, a lot of that stuff is very repetitive. Well, think about it. It's the same webinar title on the quiz, that's on the registration form, that's on the web page, that's in the calendar event. It's the same title over and over and over and over again. Well, to save me time, what I did was I built this spreadsheet here that I have to type in 5 items at the top. And as long as I type in these 5 items at the top, it generates everything else below, so I can simply copy and paste these into my other items. So what I put in is the title, the full title, the short title, the date, a description, and then a shortened URL. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. So basically, I put that in, and then it gives me everything I need. Let me zoom in a little bit here so we can see this a little bit better. So for example, after I type these 5 things in, let's say in a little bit we're going to get to a section where I have to create the registration form. Well, there's the title for the form. There's the title for the responses. Here's the session title, the date, the description, and the URL. All this stuff that I need to paste into that registration form, boom, all in one place, ready to go, calculated dynamically for me. It pulls from above and it throws all this stuff together. Okay, so that's what this one is all about. And again, do you have to do that? No, of course not. But it saves me a little time. It actually saves me a lot of time. This is one of the biggest time savers there is, just knowing ahead of time everything I need to fill in and having it all prepared for me just by entering these 5 items at the top here. All right, so that's the webinar detail generator. What do I do next? Next, I go to Google Drive and I create a folder for the session. So in our Google Drive, what we have is we have a folder called webinars. And inside of the webinars folder, we have subfolders, one for each and every webinar we do. And so you'll see those are named by the date and then a short title for those. And so what we do is we create a folder for each webinar so that everything's in there. So here's a sample one. This is one I did on Google Tools for Special Needs. You can see everything that I need is inside of that webinar, the quiz, the evaluation, the slideshow. I keep everything in one spot so it's easy to find. All right, so that's the next step, is to create that folder. After that, the next thing we do is we create a web page for the session. Okay, so just like you guys saw here, this web page that we all are coming to on our tech integration site, that is the next thing we create. Now, there's a lot of stuff happening on that web page. You can say, well, Eric, that could take a little bit of time. No, not at all, because again, we use templates for everything. And so I've created a web page template that I simply make a copy of anytime I want to create a new webinar page. I'll show you that real quick. Let me pull up my other account here. And here I am in edit mode on our tech integration page. And so what I do is, if you haven't used Sites, just real quick, show you the general idea. And of course, you don't have to use Sites. You can use any tool you want, but Sites is what we're using. I simply come up to the top right, click on the Create a New Page button. And when I do that, I'm of course going to give it a title and give it a link, which I'm going to copy right from my spreadsheet because everything's in that spreadsheet. But here's the real key. What I do is I choose a template. And you'll notice that in my templates here, I have one called Webinar Template. What Sites allows you to do is create a page, make it just perfect, and then save it as a template. So that's what I did. I took one of our webinar pages, got it just right, and then I saved it as a template. So now I'll just call this test webinar. So we've got something in there for what we're doing here today. So test webinar, and I choose webinar template for the template. And when I hit create, as simple as that, it's going to have that whole skeleton already created for that page. And now all I have to do is go in and clean stuff up, put in a title, put in the description, put in the correct date, put in the resources, link in the chat doc, the evaluation, the quiz. So I'm going to go back through over time and I would fill all of this in, linking in all the different pieces that I need, and then just hit save when I'm done and keep going back in and editing it as I need to. All right. So again, you just need to find ways to save time. And that is one of the things we do, is using a Google Sites template to create that page. Now you may say, Eric, why are you creating a web page? There's a lot of different ways you could go about getting the webinar out to people. You know, the very first webinar, I don't know if anybody's here who was actually in my first webinar, the very, very first webinar we did, I did not do that. I did not create a single web page. Instead, I just had people go to the Google Plus page where the Hangout was. And I think that was a little confusing because, you know, I like Google Plus. I actually love it. It's great. But as you'll see here in a bit, we're going to start up we're going to create a Hangout here in just a while to show you how that works. It's a bit of a busy page with a lot of stuff going on. And we wanted to have one place where somebody could go and say, this is everything I need. There's the title, the description, the date, the time. There's the video. There's all the resources. There's the chat, the evaluation, the quiz. And so I think it's really helpful to have a single web page that people can go to find all of your information for the webinar in one place. All right, what's up next? The next thing we do is we do create a tiny.cc URL for the session page. Now, the session page isn't really long. If you look at it, it's not a terribly long address. ti.apps.spark.org/videopd/2016-0216-video-pd. It's not horrible, but I'm not going to tell somebody that. I'm not going to ask somebody to type that in. So instead, what we do is we use a service called tiny.cc, which is a URL shortener. But hey, use whichever one you like. There's Bitly, there's tinyURL, even Google has their own shortener. We typically use tiny.cc. It's one that we've had a lot of success with. So that's one of the next things we do is we go ahead and create that shortened URL to use for all of the information we're going to send out about the webinar. Next up, again, something you may not do, but I create some Google Drawing images. So for example, inside of Google Drawings, I have a template for our header that goes on everything for the webinars. So I've already built this header, and of course I'd make a copy, go in, File, make a copy, and I'll change the title and I'll change the image over here. But I use this header on the web page. I use it on the Google Plus event. I use it in the form when you register. I use it on the quiz. So I go ahead and I create that. Again, you don't have to, but that's something I like to do. And I also do the same for what I call the posting image. Whenever I share information about the webinar on online, whether it's Google Plus or whatever service social media I'm putting it out on, I like for it to be able to grab a nice, crisp, clean image that a lot of times when you post on something like Google Plus, it'll grab that image and it'll put it there with your posting. I like to do that, so I create an image like that, which I always throw at the bottom of the web page, as you can see, as I did right down there. So it gives the post online something to grab for a nice descriptive image. All right, let's keep on going. What do we do next? Next, we create the registration form. All right, so for this, there's going to be two pieces. There's going to be the Google form that people fill out to register for the session. Then there's going to be the Google Sheet that collects that registration information. So there's two things, a Google Sheet and a Google form. Now, I'm saying that you need to make a copy of one of these, and you may ask, well, which one do you copy? Do you copy the sheet or do you copy the form? Well, actually, what you want to do is you want to copy the sheet, and here's why. If you copy a Google form, it just copies the form. If you copy a sheet, it copies the sheet and it copies the associated form that feeds the sheep. Yeah, I said sheep, didn't I? We're feeding sheep. Feeds the sheet. Yeah, there we go. That's a good one. We'll have that in the outtakes. No, there are no outtakes. It's live to hard drive. So, so you want to copy the Google Sheet so that you also get the form copied. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let me go over to our shared folder here, and let me find the registration form. So if I take a look here, here is the webinar registration template, and here is the webinar registration template sheet that collects those responses. Just to show you what I mean, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a copy of this sheet, and once I do that, watch what happens. What's going to happen is at the top of my drive, I'm now going to see a copy. Whoops, it just jumped me out of there. Let me get back into that folder there. I now have a copy of the form and a copy of the spreadsheet. It copies both of them. If you copy the sheet, it copies the form and the sheet. Now, what else is nice about that? Here's the other thing. Let me open up the sheet and I'll show you. We like to have some built-in formulas. Well, you know what? If you just copy the form, when it generates a sheet eventually, guess what? You don't get any of those special formulas. Well, what kind of formulas would somebody need? Well, let me show you real quick. So for example, this is what the spreadsheet looks like when people sign up for one of our webinars. You get the time stamp, their email, their name, blah, 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 blah. That's all pretty normal. So everything up column A through H, that's just pretty normal. Well, what's this stuff over here? IJK. Well, this is other information, the title of the webinar, the date of the webinar, and the link to the webinar. Well, where does that come from? It's not coming from the people filling it out. Instead, what I do is I've got another tab at the bottom called Data, and in that tab, I pre-fill the title of the webinar, the date of the webinar, and the link to the webinar. Now, why am I doing that? Well, I fill it in there, and then I use formulas to pull it into here, because what happens is when somebody registers, I like to send them an email. I like to say, thanks for registering. Here's the information. I like to say, you have registered for this title of a webinar on this date, and here's the link to get to it. If you guys registered for this webinar, you should have gotten an email like that. So what I do is I have pre-made these formulas that pull from the data tab. So every time somebody fills out this form, their information goes in through column A through H, and then my information copies down into I, J, and K, and then I use a special tool to send out an email. Now, what's that special tool? Well, in my case, that special tool is yet another mail merge. Now, there's a lot of different ways you guys can do this. You got to pick the one that makes the most sense to you, the one that you like best. But again, I tend to like the simplest tool to do the job. You know, there's other tools I could use, but for just sending out a welcome email saying thank you for registering, this is the perfect one for it. So yet another mail merge is an add-on that you can install inside of Google Sheets. And what you do with that, let me pop back over to my copy here, is what I'm going to do is from my sheet, I'm going to go up to add-ons, and I'm going to go down to yet another mail merge, and then I'm going to click on configure form submission notifications. So with this add-on installed, after I've installed it, I simply come over here and say, I want to configure what happens when somebody submits a form. So I click on that, and it pops up this little panel here where I can tell it what to do when somebody submits a form. And what I'm going to have it do is send them a merged email. So you'll see I get two options here. The one I want is the second one, notify address submitted by the form. So I'm going to say when somebody submits the form, notify the person who submitted it. And then I have to pick an email draft that I want to use. Now, here's the way yet another mail merge works. It allows you to pick a draft email that you have created. And in my case, it's this one called registration confirmation for webinar. Now, you may say, Eric, what do you mean a draft email? Well, I'll show you. Let me pop over here real quick and I'll open up Gmail and I'll show you just what I mean. So if you go into Gmail on your account and you go to your drafts folder, what you'll notice is that you've got a bunch of messages, perhaps, that you started writing, but you never hit send on. You created them, but you didn't hit send. Where do they go? They go to your drafts. Well, I have a draft here called registration confirmation for webinar. And basically it says, you have been registered for the following webinar: title, date, webinar, link, and then it gives them information below about how to access the webinar. Well, title, date, and link, those are variables, okay? Those are going to get merged from the spreadsheet. Where are they going to get merged from? Right here, title, date, and link. Columns I, J, and K are going to allow them to grab the title, the date, and the link and run that merge. And so when I start up yet another mail merge, again, I say notify addresses submitted by the form. I pick my draft, which in my case is the registration confirmation for the webinar, and then I pick who the recipient is. In this case, it's column B, the email address. And that's it. As long as I've told it which draft to use and where the email address is located in the spreadsheet, I just hit save. And there we go. From here on out, it's going to watch for any time somebody submits a registration. And when they do, it's going to automatically send that email off to them. Excellent. All right. Let's keep on moving. So what do we do next? So we've got our registration set up. People can now register for the webinar and get a nice friendly email welcoming them to it. Next up, we create the Google Doc chat document. Not too much to say there. It's just a pretty simple doc. As you've seen, if you're in the Q&A doc, I simply put in the topic, the date, and a link to the resources, and I just make a copy of this, and then I set it to editable. So anybody who has the link is able to edit it. And then, of course, I link that in on the website. So if you guys are using the Q&A doc yourself, you're taking advantage of that. All right, what's next? Next up, we won't spend too much time on this. It's pretty similar to most forms. We then create a Google Sheet and Google Form for the evaluation. And again, copy the sheet so that it copies the form automatically with you. And that we've already got set up as well. It's very simple, nothing too fancy about it. So if I come in here to the evaluation, here is the evaluation spreadsheet that we make a copy of, and the form that goes along with it. I'll show you the form. This is the PD evaluation form. Very simple. We just want to get feedback on the 4 Ps. How was the presenter? How was the pace? Was it personalized? and was it practical? And then, of course, we give a spot where people can fill in some additional information beyond that if they want to. All right, good stuff. All right, what do we do after that? Next up, it's time to create the Google Calendar event for this because we want people to be able to find this. So again, I simply go to Google Calendar and I create an event, but I don't want to have to fill in all that information. So let me go ahead and go back to one of my examples here that I've got. We'll grab that again here. So our details generator, there it is. Here is our webinar details generator. If I scroll down to the calendar section, you will see I've already got the title there and I've already got the description. So this is going to create a calendar event that has the title of the webinar and then the date, the link to it, who's the presenter, and the description. And all of that, again, gets filled in. If I come up here and if I edit these top 5, then it, of course, cascades down to all of these, including the calendar event. Now, the reason we do that is because it allows us to put this on the calendar. So if somebody goes to our tech integration site, they will see a calendar off to the right-hand side that once it generates here it comes. And so they can see things like here's today's webinar on Google Tools for a Complete Video PD Solution, and here's upcoming webinars as well. They can click on it, get all the information right there. But it also allows us to add this onto the webinar page. So right below the description of the webinar and above the video is a link where people can click to add this event to their Google Calendar. And it allows them to add it automatically there so they don't forget about the date and time. What do we do next? Next, we create the Hangout on Air. Now for this, I'm going to have to pull over a different account because I create this with my personal account. So let me go ahead and I'm going to grab that and drag it on over here. Give that a second to come up. Here it's coming up now. And so let me drag over my personal account. And what I do is I go to Google Plus for this, okay? Because Google Hangouts is Google's chatting tool. You can use it for voice chat, video chat, text chat, all of that. But there's a special version of Hangouts called Hangouts on Air. And the only way to be able to use Hangouts on Air is to use a Google Plus account. And we'll explain what makes that special here in just a moment. But as I'm saying, I have to start by going to Google Plus. And from Google Plus, I can now go over to my home button on the top left. And from there, I can choose Hangouts. And when I choose Hangouts from that drop-down, I get a link to the normal Hangouts, which is not what I want. And then I get a link up here to the special Hangouts called Hangouts on Air. That's actually what I want. So why? What's the difference? Well, here's the deal. A regular Hangout will allow you to do a video conference with up to 15 people and share your screen, chat with them. You can see each other. Fantastic. But it has those limits. It can only be with up to 15 people, and it does not get recorded. That's the difference with a Hangout on Air. A Hangout on Air can be broadcast live, just like this webinar is right at this moment. We've got tons of people watching it, and it's way more than 15 people can be connected at a time watching the webinar. And it gets automatically recorded. You don't need special software. You don't need anything, special equipment. Basically, when the webinar is done and I hit done, it just automatically records directly to my YouTube channel. I don't have to worry about uploading it or having some special capture software. So from my Google Plus page, from Hangouts, I go to Hangouts on Air, and then I click Create a Hangout on Air. Now, I'll go ahead and create one just to do a quick example. So I'll just say, example for webinar, and I'll just say please ignore in case anybody sees that. And then what you can do is you can come down where it says, does it start now or later? And you can specify the date and time. So I could come down here and I could pick a date when this is going to be. We'll schedule it for tomorrow, and we'll say it's going to be around noon or something like that. So, you can schedule it, put in what time of day and how long it's going to last. And so at that point, I've got my title, my description, I put in the date and time for when the webinar is going to be, and I make it viewable to the public. Anybody can view it that wants to. These are all publicly viewable webinars. And when it's all done, I just click the share button. And again, I'll get rid of this one later. But what it does is it then creates what's called an event page. and there's an event page. And so every webinar, every Hangout on Air you create gets its own event page where you've got the video and you've got some information about it. Well, I do this for all of my webinars. You probably don't end up seeing this page very much because all I'm trying to do is create the Hangout on Air. And then what I do is I'm going to copy the embed code for this video and I bring it back to our tech integration site. So people don't have to come here to the Google Plus event page, which again, I think there's a lot of stuff going on. It can get a little hectic there, a little confusing. So all you have to do is after you create the event, you simply come over here below where it's got your name, and there's a spot that says links. If you give a click on this little link that says links, you can now copy the video embed. And so right here is an iframe code. I can come in and I can copy that video embed. And when I come to the links and I copy the video embed, I can now go back over to my website that I was editing earlier. So this is the demo one we were playing around with. And I can come in here and I can edit that page. And I can go to where my template is holding the spot for my video, go into my little gear to edit the gadget, and I can paste in that code. And I usually change the width to make it a little bit bigger. I do 853 by 480. That's about as big as I can get it, that it still fits nicely on the page. Hit OK, hit save, and now that video from the Hangout on Air, it's now waiting there on the session webpage for time for it to go live. And then after it goes live, this becomes the recorded video afterwards. All right. So that's the idea of creating the Hangout on Air. All right. Well, we're getting darn close to the end of what we do to set up the webinar. Then we'll talk about what we do in it and what we've learned from it. So what do we still have to do? The next thing is probably the biggest one as far as technical stuff goes. So I'm just giving you fair warning. This is the deep end of the pool here. This is the part that probably is the most sophisticated, and that is creating the quiz. All right. Now, again, I've got a Google Sheet and a Google Form. Just like all the others, the quiz has a form and a sheet. But again, I copy the Google Sheet because there's a lot of formulas inside of that one. I do not want to lose all those formulas. If I just copy the form, it'll generate a blank sheet. That's not any good. I want the Google Sheet that has all my pre-made formulas in it because I don't want to recreate those every single time. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to use two tools, one called Copy Down and one called Autocrat. These are two add-ons, and this is what lets me send out my certificates. That's how all of that happens, okay? So let me kind of show you the big picture overview, and then you can go into the details more. I've got a nice link here that we will use, which has all of the Autocrat merge settings. We're going to look at these very briefly, but you guys can go into a lot more detail on your own if you want to copy the merge settings that I use. All right, so let's talk about how I build the quiz. So I'm going to go back over to my drive, and I'm going to find the spreadsheet for the quiz. So here is my webinar quiz template. Okay, so again, I'm going to the spreadsheet for the webinar quiz. I'm not going to the form. I'm going to the spreadsheet for the webinar quiz, and I'm going to make a copy of that. So let's go ahead and make a copy. And normally I would move these into their own folder. For the sake of this, I'm just going to let them go ahead and stay in this folder. That's fine. Obviously, normally I drag them over into the correct folder so they're nicely organized. I wouldn't want to make a mess. But for today, I'll go ahead and make a mess. So now that I've got this spreadsheet copied, I'm going to go ahead and open up the spreadsheet. And what you're going to see is there's actually quite a lot of stuff going on in here. The first row is already filled in, and that's important because I need to have some stuff already filled in here because I'm going to use some special tools and special formulas. So what all is going on here? Well, quite a lot. So first of all, everything column A through J, that's what happens when somebody fills out a quiz. Timestamp, their name, their email address, where they're from, and then question 1, question 2, 3, 4, and 5. We always do 5-question quizzes. And so their answers are right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So up through J, that's the person taking the quiz. Everything after that, that's things I've set up. Well, what have I set up? Well, a number of things. So for example, I grade how they did on the quiz. Well, how do I do that? Well, notice I've got a tab at the bottom called Key. And in that Key tab, I fill in the correct answers for question 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay? And then I have a formula here that compares what they entered to this key tab here. And if they're the same, they get a 1. If they type in something that's not the same, they get a 0. And so they get a 1 or a 0. And this is a very simple formula. I'm just saying if what they typed in, if the key from if what they typed in like J2, for example, if what they typed into J2 equals what's in the key tab at B5, then give them a 1, otherwise give them a 0. And right over here in B5, that is the answer that we're looking for on that particular quiz. The next formula here adds them all up and multiplies by 20 to give them a score out of 100. And the next formula here simply says if they got less than an 80, they didn't pass, give them an N, otherwise give them a Y for yes. So you can get an 80 or 100% to pass. So 4 right or 5 right. Now, all of those formulas are pre-made. I don't want to have to remake them every time. Here's the other thing though. In addition to the formulas, I want to send out a couple of other things to the person when they complete the quiz. I want to say something like, thanks for taking the quiz on this topic. Well, how do I get the title in there? Well, just like I did on the registration, I have over here a data tab that has the title, the web address, and the objectives. Now, the objectives are used for the certificate because usually certificates of attendance, you need to say what the objectives were for the session. So what I do is I have those in my data tab, and those get pulled in. Here's the title, here's the link, and here's the objectives. So everything from K all the way over to T are things that I'm pulling from the key tab, the data tab, calculations I'm doing to grade them and have available the title, the link, and the objectives. All right. Well, if you've ever done anything with forms, one thing that you've probably noticed is that if you create your own happy little formulas here, and then somebody takes the form, guess what? These formulas do not copy down on their own. And even if you come here and if you pull this down to copy down that formula, I'll go ahead and undo that. But even if you do pull these down to copy the formulas down, when somebody fills out the form, guess what? It looks for the next available blank line. So even if you've pulled all these down yourself to have these formulas ready to go, as soon as somebody fills out the form, it's going to find the next blank line to put their responses, and it's not going to see your formulas. Okay, so that's where I use an add-on called Copy Down. And Copy Down is a very simple add-on that if I come in here to add-ons and I go to Copy Down, you've got to install it. But once you've got it installed, very simple to use. All you do is come over to the settings and you turn it on and you tell Copy Down to please copy down any formulas you have whenever somebody submits a form. So I'm going to turn it on, and as soon as it's turned on, very simple, just a couple of settings here. I'm going to say something like which row has the formulas. Well, row 2 actually has all the formulas here. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say row 2 has the formulas. And then below there, it's going to say I found all these formulas for questions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, the score, whether they passed, the title, the link, the objectives. Yep, all of those are great. Just hit save. That's it. Just turn it on. Make sure you've got the right row selected that has the formulas. Hit save. You're done. Now, anytime somebody actually takes this quiz, what's going to happen is it will fill in their information, and then Copy Down will grab all of these great formulas here and it will copy them down into the row below there. Okay. And I'll show you this in a second. We'll go ahead and actually fill one out here in a second and you'll see it live. Well, that's great. So that lets me grade them. How do I send out the certificate of attendance? Well, that's where Autocrat comes in. Autocrat is a phenomenal add-on that allows you to set conditions, choose a merge document, and run a merge anytime that those conditions are met. So what I've done is I've put together a document here that is linked in, and this is my Autocrat merge settings, and it tells you exactly what I do to create my merge, all the things I go through to create this, okay? Now I'm going to show you real quick the idea. And again, this is going to be crazy fast. I would say normally I would spend a solid session just on everything with Autocrat, but here's the gist behind it. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to go to add-ons and Autocrat once you've got it installed, and you'll launch it. And once you launch Autocrat, what you're going to do is you're going to create a merge job. And again, I'm going to show it real fast here. I would say definitely look at my template that has a lot more information in there. So I'm going to create a new merge job. And what it's going to ask me to do is it's going to ask me to pick a template. Well, I've already created a template ahead of time. Okay, I have a certificate of completion. I'll show you what that looks like. My webinar certificate, here it is. There's the webinar certificate template. It's just a Google Doc that has a little title at the top, a little certificate of completion, and it's got your first name, your last name, the title, the timestamp, and the objectives. And that's the merge document that Autocrat's going to stick in your name and your last name and the title and the timestamp and the objectives. It's going to use that merge document. So when I go into Autocrat, the first thing I have to do, let me zoom out a little bit here, is I'm going to choose from my drive my template. And so from my drive, I'll go in and I'll go to my webinar folder and I'll go to my templates folder here. Let me see, and I'll find that template, which is webinar certificate template. There it is. And what it does is it tries to match up the variables that I put in that certificate with the headers inside of my spreadsheet. And I'll just call this job passed, because this is for people that passed the quiz. And you'll notice it's matching them up. It's finding all the tags that were inside of that certificate, and it's matching them to the headers in my sheet. Now, if these are wrong, I can adjust them, but I named them exactly the same so they always match up. After that, I move on to the next step, where basically I just copy and paste this stuff over that I've created. So for example, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab the name of my file and I'll copy and paste that in. So it's going to be certificate, title, your first name, your last name, and the timestamp. Then I say I'm going to email this out to somebody. And so now again, I come over here and I grab my template settings. So I'm going to grab your email address, and then I'm going to grab the subject for the email, which is going to be quiz results followed by the title. And then I'm going to grab the actual message, which is going to have your name in it. And it's going to tell you how you did on it. And it's going to tell you how you can contact us and how you can look at other webinars. So I'm going to come here and paste in the body of the message. So again, it's going to say, good job. You passed this quiz with a score of, and it's going to insert the score there for you. I'm going to tell it to add that as a PDF attachment. And under the advanced settings, I'm going to say, well, how do I know if somebody passed? Well, the condition for the merge is that the passed column equals yes. And so that will let them know that if they passed, if that equals yes, then they actually passed. And at that point, I can pick a folder to drop these in. Normally, I just throw them in a certificates folder so that I don't lose track of everything, because this, again, can get a little bit crowded after a while. And so it's good to be, here we go, I'll drop them in the certificates folder. It's good to be as organized as you can. And then the last thing I do is I tell it to run this automatically whenever a new form is submitted. So as soon as somebody takes the quiz, Autocrat's going to run, check to see if they passed. If they did, it's going to grab the certificate, fill in their information, create a PDF, and email it to them. Now, I don't just do that. We don't have time to show you everything I do. I do the same thing twice, but I do it for failing also. So I have a second job that I create, which is for when somebody fails. And in that case, it's very similar. The only difference is it's going to say things like, sorry, you did not pass, please try again. And it does not send them a certificate. It just sends them an email saying, please try again. So let me show you what this looks like. Let me go back over to the example of the special needs quiz. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up that quiz real quick, and I'll show you what it looks like. And I'll take it real fast here. So let me go up to my form and I'll go to my live form. Whoops, go to my live form, open that up. So there's the quiz I'm going to take. And if you scroll way on down, you'll see we get to the bottom and there will be nobody after line 197 is the most recent one. So I'll come here and I'll just put in my name and my email address. And we'll go ahead and see if I can get these right real quick. So that one's right. And let me see that one, speech to text. That one's a good one. Readability. Let me see, what else do we have here? Closed captioning and that one. Okay, so I'm going to hit submit. And as soon as I do, let's take a look. And down here, I should get line 198. And there it is. There's line 198. And then everything's going to start filling in automatically. Blah, 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 blah. That's all filling in. And if I scroll over, Autocrat is going to run here in just a moment, and this is the Autocrat settings here when it runs, and I'll get some merge information here showing that it is actually run. There it goes. Autocrat has just run. It has created the certificate. So if I pop over to my Spark account, and if I go to my Gmail on my Spark account, I should be getting a certificate here. Let's see if it's made it in already. And there it is. Quiz results. Eric Curts, congratulations on passing the quiz with a score of 100. And here is your certificate. And there it is. It has merged that certificate in. All right. So fair warning, like I said, that was the most complicated part of it there. All right. Well, let's keep going here. We got a few more things I do want to mention to you guys. So I don't want to, we still got just enough time. I can squeeze in a couple more things here. So that's how we set up the quiz. After that, basically, we advertise the webinar, put it out on communities and Twitter, and we use MailChimp for a newsletter. I then send a reminder, typically a day before the webinar. And there's the Autocrat settings we talked about. And then that's it. At that time, it is now ready time to do the webinar. So what happens on the day of the webinar itself? At that point, basically, I set up my equipment. And what I would recommend for you guys out of all of this is the idea of having a second monitor. Now, I like having a nice mic as well. I think that is important. People will put up with bad video. They will not put up with bad audio. It's just too hard to listen to. So make sure you're using a nice mic. I use one called a Blue Yeti, but you can buy, much cheaper mics than that. I got mine on Woot at half off. Otherwise, probably wouldn't have gotten that. But get a nice mic if you can, but have a second monitor, because that's what I've got running right now. This monitor you guys are looking at, that's the one where my Hangout is sharing the screen. Over to the right-hand side, if I move my mouse off, I've got another whole monitor over here where I've got all kinds of stuff. Anything I need to pull over, if there's a script I need to read, if there's, the Q&A doc I need to look at, if I need to take a look at the Hangout itself, make sure it's running properly. I definitely encourage you guys, if you're using a laptop, plug in a second monitor. If you're using a desktop, get a video card that supports 2 monitors, like a dual head video card. It will make your life so much easier when doing Hangouts. When people use a single monitor, a lot of times you end up getting the image inside the image where you're sharing your screen, and the Hangout is basically doing that inception effect, and it can get really frustrating trying to open the right windows. We then do a test Hangout to make sure the connection's working well, test our sound, make sure everything is sharing right. And then I launch the Hangout 15 minutes before the real time for the webinar. So I start it 15 minutes early so people can jump in and everybody's ready to go when it's time to begin. I do use a typed up canned intro. So we told you we were going to pull back the curtain. So yes, that's why it always sounds the same. Every time we start a webinar, I'm reading off of a piece of paper with a little intro. And then I do my webinar, and whoever is assisting, so in this case, Anthony's assisting today, so he monitors the chat doc. If he's presenting, I monitor the chat doc. And then we've got a little canned outro at the end that I always read the same thing at the end each time. And then I stop the broadcast when that's all over. Now, I can't demonstrate that to you today because we're in a Hangout, so I can't really run a Hangout inside a Hangout. So I can't really show you that, but that's the general idea of running it inside of the Hangout, okay? Now, once that's done, that video goes automatically to YouTube. So let me pull up my YouTube real quick here, and I'll show you what that looks like. So let me grab my YouTube here, and I'll show you what happens. So basically, if I pull up my YouTube account, and if I go to my channel, and if I go to my video manager, anything that I do with Hangouts automatically shows up here in my video manager. So I did a test one the other day at the tech conference. So automatically after I did this test Hangout, it just shows up right there inside of my video manager. I can click the edit button and I can clean it up a little bit. Now, I typically do a few things. So I'll go in and I'll change the title, the description, maybe the tags, just so it says the appropriate things. Under the enhancements option, that's where I'll go into trim things. So you notice there's a trim option here, and that lets me cut off the beginning, all that dead air at the beginning and any dead air at the end. So I use the trim option to cut off the beginning and the end where we really don't have anything happening. I do use the audio option a lot of times to add some outro music at the end. So there's music playing when it's ending. And then I use annotations as well sometimes to add little pop-ups or little, links that people can click on in the video. But I don't do a whole lot, honestly. Anthony and I again, we don't have time to do a ton with editing. So it's pretty much what it is what you get. So we very, very, very little editing. After that, we pretty much just go ahead and keep an eye on the assessments and the evaluations. We typically send an email out to the people that registered in case they missed it, saying, hey, the webinar is done, and you can now view it yourself online. And that brings us up to what we've learned from all of this. All right, so what we've learned is a couple of things. First of all, webinar presentations take time and practice to get good at. It really is different than standing in front of a group of people. If you've done presentations where you've had 25, 30, 50, 100 people in front of you, that's its own kind of thing. But you know what's nice about that is you see people's faces. You can see if they're smiling or frowning or whatever. Right now, I have no idea. I'm looking at the Hangout and I see there's dozens and dozens and dozens of people watching this live, and I have no idea what you're thinking. So I do lose some interaction with the audience. Now, we try to improve that with the chat doc, but still, it's not the same. And so just be aware, it's going to take a little time getting used to when you're doing a webinar to not have that feedback that you normally get from people. But over time, you become more comfortable with it. Again, I said definitely use 2 monitors. That really helps a lot. Other things we've learned is be prepared, be over prepared. There's a lot going on. You're basically teaching a session while producing a show. I mean, you've got windows going and you're clicking things and you're sharing things. And the more you can have prepared ahead of time, the better. So that's why I do have an intro printed out and an outro printed out. And I try to have everything queued up on the other monitor to drag over just to make my life as simple as possible. Having said that, even if you are overprepared, have a sense of humor when things go wrong, because they will. Like when I said something about feeding sheep instead of feeding sheet, a Google Sheet. So that's a pretty good one. But you got to be able to laugh at it because you're going to make mistakes and sometimes the technology won't work. Hey, it's a learning opportunity. Show people how to respond when things don't go right. That's okay. Have fun with it. And last point is this really works. We as presenters have become better trainers because we do this. It makes us really, really think about the content we're sharing and be very prepared so that when we do face-to-faces, those are even better than they would have been before. And we have reached tens of thousands of people with these trainings that otherwise maybe would not have gotten those. And so I absolutely encourage you guys to do the same thing. Pick whatever out of this session made sense to you that you like, and absolutely do that. Do this for your staff. Do this for your students. It's a wonderful way to, for free, at no cost whatsoever, to create nice video professional development that can reach a lot more people than you might be able to reach otherwise. Now, as we start to wrap up here, I'm going to look over to the Q&A doc. I am sure Anthony has done a phenomenal job answering things in there. But Anthony, if there is anything in there, you can use the little text chat on the side if you want to draw my attention to something. Or if there's something you want to highlight, you let me know. I'm not seeing anything. I think you have knocked it out of the ballpark there. I think you've been answering everything just fine. But if there is anything, I'm going to give Anthony just a moment to respond to me. Again, we're not in the same room. Normally we're in the same room. We are in 2 different locations today because of the snow day. But I'm not seeing Anthony typing anything in the chat to tell me that I need to answer any questions. So I am assuming he has got this taken care of fantastically. All right. Well, very good. Well, as we go ahead and start to wrap all of this up for today, let me go ahead and head back to our title slide here. Just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to join us today to watch this session. Please remember that all of today's resources can be found at tiny.cc/spark, SPARCC 231. When you go there, that's where you're going to find the recorded video. You'll find the resources for the session. You'll find the chat doc, which, hey, even if you didn't get in it, take a look. There's probably a bunch of other questions in there that Anthony filled out and answered, and you can learn from those as well. In addition to that, we've got our session evaluation. Love to hear feedback from you guys. Let us know how we can improve these in the future. And of course, the quiz is there for you to take and get a certificate of attendance using, as you now know, Copy Down and Autocrat to generate those for you. While you're at the website, please feel free to visit our PD schedule, where you can see other upcoming webinars. We're always adding more all the time, so definitely check back there. Check our recorded trainings to see the 30 plus sessions that we've got as of right now. Sign up for our newsletter, Sparkline, so you stay in the loop on the latest things we're doing. And of course, definitely feel free to contact Anthony or myself if you have any questions. So again, thank you so very much for taking the time to watch this session. We hope to see you again over the coming weeks for more educational technology webinars. Take care.